as the genius, and there is always 2-3% genius in any gathering. Okay, there's always 2 or 3% of geniuses, in any, really bright ones, and then you have the poor ones. Well, a good teacher is one who actually caters for those who are of least as well, not just the brilliant one. That's easy actually. It's this one which is the most difficult. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to make the Quran accessible. And of course, the Quran also makes this claim again and again. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. We made the Quran easy for understanding, dhikr, understanding, for reminding, tazkir. How do you remind somebody? If I was to use Shakespearean language, or if I was to use Dutch, or if I was to use Mandarin here to give you, make things easy for you, it wouldn't work, would it? So the Quran was saying, the Quran, Allah says, is easy for everybody to understand. So, and as I taught the Quran, I was always, saying to my students, this is accessible. You can really understand it. You can get the whole gist of the surah. It does work from the beginning to end. It is beautifully jointed. Okay? In fact, it is cyclical. What it begins with, it ends with. I really can show that, and inshallah, perhaps later on we will do it with some of the shorter surahs. And so that was my motivation. If people ask me, why did you, there are so many translations, but sadly very few of them are understandable and accessible. And I'd really like to see one of you here standing up and saying, I know the whole theme of this surah, I understand the stories in it, and I know what is the message of it. We can't do it. And that is an appalling state to be in, to be honest, for us. And one of the reasons perhaps is poor translations. The other is, we have been indoctrinated, and I've been doing it myself as well. We have been told that reading the Quran gives you lots of sawab and ajr. So we've been very successful actually getting that message across. So you now read, and what you do, you say, I will read the Arabic, I will read and read, I will do khatam. I will do the khatam. Okay, I will khatam. Whether I understand or not is not important. I'm going to do khatam, okay? And we all do that, sadly. And I've been so successful in indoctrinating you to do that. And I think that's another failing. Do you remember when you were in the masjid? Maulana Sahib, Ustad Sahib told you to read and learn it. He never said, read the meaning, understand it. I don't know if anybody had such a wonderful teacher. Tell me. That's the madness of it. Sorry to say. I'm a culprit of that as well. Isn't that madness? That is actually, this is not tilawat either. Because Allah says, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَتْلُونَهُ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ. The people to whom we gave the book read it as it ought to be read. Some will say, well, that ought to be read, that haqqa tilawa is reading it with tajweed and ma'rifatul wukuf, reading the letters as they ought to be read, pronouncing them properly, as we call, with the received pronunciation from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is tilawat. No, that is not tilawat. That is not the haqq of tilawat, because in another place Allah talks about this tilawat. And Allah says, الَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ. Those who recite the book of Allah, what do? أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَيَرْجُونَ تِجَارَةً لَن تَبُورَ. They establish the salah. Those who read the book do these things. وَيَرْجُونَ تِجَارَةً لَن تَبُورَ. And they're hopeful and expectant of a business that will never fail. How could you do those things? How could you act on it if you didn't understand it? You couldn't do tilawat then. Tilawat already, so the idea of tilawat is, you read your email, hey? And your wife asks you, did you read that email? And you say, yes, I read it. What was it? I don't know. Could you say you've read it? Not really. You couldn't have. Because the whole point of reading is to understand what is the point, eh? It defeats the whole object of reading. May Allah help us, pray. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ mahjura. The Prophet will complain, he will lament, Ya Allah, my people abandoned the Quran. Mahjuran. Did hijrah from it, migrated from it, run away from it, fled from it. Do you think we fall into that category? I think so to an extent, to be honest. We go for the sawab and ajr. Yet, there is something higher we should be aiming for, which is enlightenment. There's an Urdu muhavra as well, Reading, tilawat gives you ajr and sawab. But fame of the Quran gives you nur. The understanding gives you the light, enlightenment. The Quran is enlightenment. This was a book that enlightened the Arab mind. If you look at the historians who've done research on how the Arabs, these Bedouins, these lowly of lows, okay, the lowest of all, okay, how did they transform in less than a century? What was it? The only answer is it was the glorious, majestic Quran, which actually forced them to think, reflect, and to become not blind followers of Greeks, but challenge people who were open-minded, willing to observe and understand. Today you cannot succeed. Your mind cannot develop if you do not think. And I don't know whether this is one of the reasons why our religious literacy is so poor, and we are not good thinkers, including our ulama, including myself. We're not good thinkers because what do? We read without understanding, and we're happy with that state. Seriously, this might be the reason for our backwardness. So I'm now saying, to my students and everybody, for God's sake, become thinkers. One of my favorite prayers is Allah, give me your love and proximity and nearness. But another one is always, make me intelligent. I hope you're also making a prayer like that, eh? Ulul albab, the Quran talks about. The people of lub, the people of intelligence, okay? Ulul albab, who are they? Alladhina yadhkuruna Allah qiyaman wa qu'udan wa ala janubi wa yatafakkaruna fi khalqi samawati wal ard. They think deeply, they ponder, they reflect about Allah's creation. What does a scientist do? What does a scientist do? I trained as a scientist. My PhD is in biochemistry. I worked as a research scientist for 10 years. Okay? So what does a scientist do? Exactly this. Thinks, observes. Subhanallah. And this is why, teaching children and ourselves, getting into this habit of getting away from just tilawat to, moving from tilawat to the next stage, which is fahm, understanding, knowing what it's talking about. But you see, you can't do it. You don't know Arabic. And I'll tell you, even if you went to Oxford for 4 years, as my niece did, and studied Arabic with the best minds and the best people, you still can't, even after 4 years. Seriously, you can't. Not even after 4 years of Oxford or Cambridge learning, you will not be able to properly. You will need another good 3 or 4 years of serious practice before you're able to. And this is why most of our ulama don't actually understand Arabic. Sorry to say that. That's a fact. I studied in a seminary, and in the final year, in my class, out of 30 of us, there was only 3 or 4 who could really understand. The rest were still struggling badly. So, and for me, exactly the same thing. I've been doing it for more than 47 years now, since I started learning the language of Arabic. And I still have, Professor Alan Jones' Quranic Arabic grammar on my shelves, and I have Bizada Imdad Hussain, who was one of my teachers as well, his Imdad al-Sarf and Imdad al-Naf. My other teacher from Darul Uloom, Tasheel al-Sarf and Tasheel al-Naf of Noori Sahib, is still on my shelves. Seriously, we have to revisit and go again and again and study. So don't say that, I'm gonna have a crash course in Arabic in 4 weeks and I'm gonna understand the Quran. Are you joking? Absolutely joking there. No? You're not going to do it, all right? And don't kid yourself. That doesn't mean don't learn it. What it will help you to do is to be able to understand the file, maf'ul, and fail. No? What is the object? What is the subject? And what is the the verb here? But to understand the nuances and the beauty of it, sorry, you can't do it. No? It takes a lot of hard work. Seriously, it is, and that is why you need translators. Okay. So, what is the job of a good alim? Well, it's very simply to translate the 1400-year-old manuscripts, the 1400-year-old language into contemporary language of the people. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. Allah says, we didn't send a prophet except with the language of his people. And they had to, how else could you do hadaya? How else could you give guidance if it is not in the language which is common and, as we said, natural, clear, and impactful? It wouldn't work, would it? So what does that mean? We Muslims need to invest, not Oxford Press. So this is why Abdul Halim's translation is a very beautiful translation. Professor Abdul Halim is a master. He's an Al-Azhari graduate and then later educated in Cambridge and professor in SOAS for the last 30 years. And his translation is wonderful, but that's published by Oxford Press, which again challenged my ghairat, to be honest. Professor Abdul Halim is somebody I've traveled with, and we've invited him in our institute. And he is one of the great authorities on the Quran. If anybody wants to really know what the Quran means, then there is Abdul Halim. Seriously, he's a very, very powerful master of the Quran and its language. He's also done a dictionary of the Quranic Arabic, and his work on it is amazing. But even that, as I said, is published by Oxford. So that challenged my ghairat as well. Why should Oxford be just doing it, and we Muslims are not doing something for the book that is for us and is my book? Why should we? So alhamdulillah, since Professor Abdul Halim's came out, and I had relations with him and invited him, I began to think, this is not right. We should be doing something better than that, which is accessible to everybody. His translation again has its own challenges, and he's a very rationalist, so in some ways he would be a challenge for our Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, and he's a very modernist as well, so it poses some serious challenges for some of his interpretations as well. And I came from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, reared in a Sunni Sufi traditions, alhamdulillah. So my thinking is that of Azur Qibla Zia al-Ummat. It is the thinking that Fakhruddin Razi displays in his Tafsir Mafatihul Ghaib. It's the thinking of Tafsir Mudarik of Nasafi, and the teachings of some of our classical Sufis, Tafsir Mazhari, and the Sufi Tafasir. And that is very important as well, because through your translations you can really change and do a lot of rotten things as well, okay, as are done. And sadly, some of the early Christians wanted to do that. Rodwell is a famous one, the 19th century Orientalist. His aim was to discredit the Quran, was to show how awful Muslims and Islam is because of this book, Na'uz Billah. So did some of the others, and it was our job to present an English translation that is accessible, which is impactful and meaningful. And I'm really pleased to say that, I've been working on this idea for many years, but for the last 4 years, I fully dedicated myself to it. And, this is what, for example, Professor Abdul Rahim Kidwai. Professor Abdul Rahim Kidwai is one of the world authority on Quran translations in English. He's written a book, as well as many, many articles on and criticized, and has been a very big critic of some of the translations. When I presented him my translation last year, and he then called me over, he was visiting here in Leicester, and he called me over, and he, alhamdulillah, gave a very positive response, gave me some advice, and then he wrote this on it. He said, "This translation is commendable for successfully conveying the meaning and message. The lucid translation will advance readers' understanding of the Quran. Then this is Professor Holger Zelentine. He's now a lecturer in classical rabbinic Judaism at University of Cambridge. He was at Nottingham University before this, where he was a professor of Islamic studies as well. And he wrote this when I presented him this. And we've been working for nearly 2 years on a few little projects. And he wrote, Dr. Hussain's new translation combines deep piety with philological accuracy, conveying the complexity of the text with admirable simplicity in plain English. This new translation invites us all to appreciate the Islamic scripture in a new way and will enrich experienced readers as well as beginners. I just wanted to, show that what I'm trying to do is get my readers to understand the message of the Majestic book. Okay, so you'll perhaps be saying, let's hear some of it. Does it make sense? Okay. Well, can I just ask? I've got some copies of it, so if you can give those out and people can purchase them. If they don't, you can just leave them back here. But it'll be good for you to hold it and actually see it. If you could pass them around to people, and if you can open Surah Al-Qaf. So what I've done is, for example, when I was translating, my routine was to, from Fajr till about 12 o'clock, 4 or 5 hours every day was completely dedicated. 7 days a week, alhamdulillah, no holidays, I would only do my appointments after 1 o'clock. And for nearly 4 years, this was my routine. But I always, in the afternoons, I would share it with my imams at Qrimeh Institute. We have about 10 imams. I would share it with them. I would go over, particularly with Mufti Muhammad Ismail. Yasrub Shah Sahib is one of the best teachers of Arabic. He's a graduate and student of Abdul Halim, actually. And Hafiz Naveed, Maulana Asif, and several other ulama. I would go through word by word, literally word by word. And myself, when I was translating, I would look up every word, making sure that I would take the meanings that are in our Sunni, traditional, Sufi understanding within it, within that. So, and then I had an editor on top of that, Dr. Roderick Vasi, who I would then send it to for further, comments and improving the English. When it came back, I would then redo it, and then it would be sent to my proofreader. So I think we went through about 7 or 8 editions. So, some people think this is just taking someone else's translation and tweaking it. This is not a tweaking exercise. It was a very fundamentally serious exercise that I undertook. The last para, I went back to my college in Al-Azhar in November last year. The previous year, I went to Al-Azhar for a whole month and stayed in a little dingy room for a whole month, doing the 29th juz, with some other scholars. So the idea, the picture I want to give you is, it wasn't just tweaking some of the old translations and making them. It was trying to actually think out of the box and try to actually forget those translations, because I've been teaching them, and some of them actually do appear in here, because that's natural. After 45 years of teaching it, it's bound to be in your mind, So, but I try to go beyond it, and alhamdulillah, try to put some, make it plain and clear language, alhamdulillah. Well, since the Sheikh is someone who loves the Surah Al-Qaf in particular, and I think he's been talking about it, I will do that, and I'll take you through Surah Al-Qaf. I'll stop for a few minutes as you get the copies of the Majestic Quran. So the other real challenges I had was, how do I get these sections? How do I make sections? This was a real challenge because nobody's done that before. So, but it was important. As a teacher, I know this is the most important thing for me to, as a scientist, you see, what we are trained to do in science is categorize. We're really great at classifying and categorizing and compartmentalizing. This is one of the great features of scientific skills. You always try to find which class it belongs to, which group do you place this into. And so I was always thinking, about the translation. How do I categorize it? So this was a real challenge. But for me, it was made easy because of the rukus. You know what rukus are? The ruku, the markings on the margins. You know what they are? This was a group of ulama in India who about 300 years ago actually wanted to do what I'm doing now. They wanted to do a thematic translation and didn't have the, you could say, the boldness to actually do it that way. So instead they put it in the margin that this is where a theme begins and a theme ends. Aisa? So the ruku is a marking for the beginning of a new theme. So that whole ruku is one theme. So Ya ayyuhan nasu ubudu. Let me go before that. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا. That's the second ruku of first para. And what is that all about? The whole ruku is about the munafiqs, the 7 qualities of the munafiq. Ya ayyuhan nasu ubudu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum. Here starts another ruku. Ila wa idh qala rabbuka lil malaikati inni ja'ilun. All this is about why you should worship Allah, the great, magnificent creator. And wa idh qala rabbuka lil malaikati. The whole ruku is about the creation of Adam alayhi salam. And then Ya Bani Israel, and so on and so. So it was already actually, that made it easy for me in some ways. That there was some, so it's not that arbitrary. So some people will say, who are you to give us these sections like this, eh? And my retort, well, these great ulama did it, and I'm just being an Englishman or a British citizen, I would love to, we always want to innovate, okay? And we want to make things even bite-sized. We live in an age of bite-sized, don't we? Anything more than 150 words is too much. But so I wanted to divide, and alhamdulillah, and the Quran lends itself to these shorter divisions. Okay, so inshallah in this translation, this is a very important feature, these sectioning. Okay, so Surah Al-Kahf is a great surah. Like all of the great surahs, you just can't find superlatives to describe them. They're all great. But this surah is really the clash between materialism and spirituality, and it has 5 great stories in it. And then when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, read this surah, so you may be saved from the dajjal of the dajjal, the deceptions of the dajjal. And now you begin to see. And we live in, of course, in the age of Dajjal. Certainly, I think it is. I don't know how many of you think we live in the age of Dajjal or not, but this is the age of Dajjal. Fake. Dajjal means fake, doesn't it? The president of America has coined this new word, which has now taken, has been now put into fake news, is now part of the English dictionary now. So, yes, we live in an age of Dajjal. If you don't believe it, I can give you 1,001 examples of, how Dajjali this age is. From the government to, to the wonderful journalist, and from the wonderful journalist to the judge, we see Dajjal. We see Dajjal in the financial markets. We see Dajjal in education, don't we? This new kind of Dajjal, Jana, everywhere, in every aspect of our modern life, there is some kind of Dajjal. There is some kind of deception. Okay, sometimes, in Pakistan they always complain, "Bade corrupted, bade Jana, choran." It's true, isn't it? Pakistani politics and Pakistani life, is full of corruption. What's the difference between Pakistani and British corruption? It's just very sophisticated, very complicated. Seriously, it is very complex, from government downwards. It is actually the only thing these people haven't learned in Pakistan is to be subtle and clever yet. Seriously, because they're not very educated, you see. Most of them are, the members of parliament are not educated, actually. Most of them even not even degrees. So it's... Anyway, Auzubillahi Samila Alimi Min Ash-Shaytan. And may Allah protect us from that kind of Dajjal we live in. We live in this age of Dajjal. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talked about reading this surah to be protected from Dajjal. Yeah. So, what does this surah do then? just reading it verbally is good, mashallah, as for ajr and swab, okay? And it does, I believe, as a scientist, I do believe in spiritual powers. So I think when you read Surah Al-Kahf, it puts a firewall around you. It saves you from the Dajjal. Yes, I believe that, yes. But I can assure you, that firewall is not as strong as if I understood it deeply. My firewall would be very, very powerful. No hacker could get into it. All right? What do you think? And that is what we need to be doing, And inshallah, then you can begin to understand why Rasulullah ﷺ said, read this surah at the time of Dajjal. Because all these 5 stories are actually about Dajjal, of deception. And one of we live in a world that is very misty, a foggy world, really. And what you were talking about, these spiritual experiences, this is light, this is the nur that comes from deep dhikr and deep thoughts, okay? And that's what removes the fog and the mist. And the Quran is constantly doing that. This is one of the biggest, the word taqwa is actually about that, to waken you up, to wake you up, to make you more focused, to make you attentive, aware, alive. Do you see that? To build consciousness, Allah consciousness in you. The whole concept of taqwa. So, when I reflected on surah, and I'm sure all of you can see why Rasulullah ﷺ is telling us this. Because here is a clash in all those 5 stories. There is a clash between the outward and the inward, between the material and the spiritual, between the physical and that which is invisible, but is there, okay? In all these stories, there is something very unique. So that made it easy for me, 5 stories, okay? But within those 5 stories, there are themes within it. There are, subheadings which help to, and this is what I have done, inshallah, and it makes it so easy for you to understand. And so I will look at the connection between these 5 stories at the end, as the Sheikh also mentioned that, but we'll come to that later on. But let me just read the opening verses of this, particularly the first opening verses. In the name of Allah, the kind, the caring. In the name of Allah, the kind. Yeah, I've not used those words merciful, mercy-giving, gracious, beneficent. Why? Because that is not what Rahim is. Rahim is not being merciful. The merciful is a very Christian concept. It has with it the idea of redemption and forgiveness. But Rahman and Rahma is not to do with forgiveness. That is Ghafoor. That is the Ghafir. That is the Afwa. Okay? Rahman is really, very simply, to be kind. In Arabic, it means kind. And kindness means to sense the other's need and trying to fulfill that need. What is kindness? That's the meaning of kindness. Kindness is to sense someone's and fulfill it. Not just to sense it, but to actually لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. A noble messenger has come to you who is troubled, who is hurt when he sees you in difficulty. He feels it. And what else? And then he does something. حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. And he is ever wanting your welfare. Ever wanting your welfare. So the word meaning of rahmah is not merciful. Because merciful has this idea that you go to the king with your hands up because you've been naughty. The nobles would go to the king because they hadn't given the tax. and the king would be merciful to them. All right? And that is the idea of mercy, all right? It has the Christian ideas of redemption in it. So I don't know, but again, as I said to you, our early translators were influenced by the authorized version of the Bible's translation, and they wanted to have some majesty of that in it. For me, that's not important. So, Allah, in the name of Allah, the kind. Rahim is caring, I've translated that, and it's of course superlative of the kindness. Very, very kind, especially kind. Very, very kind, especially kind to the believers. Caring is very good because it's in vogue anyway. It's very, you hear the caring profession, eh? You talk about the duty of care. As a teacher, you have a duty of care, okay? As a nurse, you have as a doctor. So caring is something in vogue as well. Some people said, it's too light for Allah. I said, I don't know what you mean by light, but I'll tell you, it's more accurate. It gives me better understanding of my Lord as someone who's kind and caring. That's what I want. I don't know about the heaviness or the lightness of it. So that's the reason behind my translation, in the name of Allah, the kind, the caring. I've given these first 7 verses the title of The Glorious Quran is a Guidance. All praises are for Allah. He sent down the book to his servant. It does not bend the truth, but it is factual. So we may give warning of severe punishment and good news to the believers who do righteous deeds. They will have paradise, where they will stay forever. You must warn those who said Allah has taken offspring. Neither they nor their forefathers had any knowledge. It is an outrageous insult they spout with their mouths. They are lying. So will you worry yourself to death over their actions? If they don't believe in this message, we made attractive what is on earth to test who is best in deeds. We have made. I've actually gone for shorter version rather than we have. I've called it. I use we've. Okay. Hadn't, isn't. I've used that, and my editor wasn't happy with that. He said, no, this isn't, majestic enough. I said, I'm not really, listen, I want, the Quran is very short. The Quran is very short in its words, and in English we have to still use double the words. More than double, actually, in my English translation, and that's being very concise, all right? And I wanted to really shorten it and to put that pace in it, which is in the original. So we've made attractive what is on earth to test who is best in deeds. We will turn the earth into a barren land. I hope as you read it at your own pace, you can understand everything that is there. And this is where, the Shaykh was saying the Quran should speak to you. And I hope it does speak to you. You don't need a tafsir for this. But I'm not saying you don't need tafsir. Tafsir is for those who want to understand deeper meanings. It's like an onion, layer upon layers, and it has layer upon layers of meanings. More mystical you are, more deeper you are, you will need that. And in fact, yourselves, you can begin to think, and learn and gain from it yourself as well. But one of the problems with the atomized tradition of tafsir is that it's very bitty, and that has been the feature of our tafasir. Kashaf takes words and he really breaks them into their constituents, okay, into their original verb they come from, and he'll explain every slant and nuance of meaning of it. But what some of them fail to do is to put it into the context. What is the whole passage saying? What is the theme? How is it related to all that? Some of them don't do that, and this is the atomized nature of our translations as well. And that is what makes it so difficult, broken actually, almost broken. So I'm trying to do a thematic. My translation is, I hope, both plain and accessible, but at the same time it's thematic translation. And I haven't actually broken the rules of the verses. I've kept the verse structure there. I've not taken a verse from meaning less or more. I've kept it as it is. And so it's not really... okay. Then, the story of the sleepers of the cave begins. The italics are actually what is known as the mahdhufat, or the ellipses. Ellipses is words that are not there, but are understood to be there, because it's the rhetoric of the Quran, the balagha of the Quran. It assumes, who I'm speaking to. Of course, it was verbal, oral to the Prophet, wasn't it? So there was no need to say, Ya Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Rasulullah, again and again, Ya Nabi, again and again. It is assumed Allah is talking to him. So when I have those maqsufat, first I take them from tafasir. So these maqsufat are not my own understandings, they're actually, but I've put them in italics to differentiate from the translation of the Quran. All right, so I've been very careful, alhamdulillah. And you see, some of the problem with our ulama sometimes is, they just have a look, brief look, and say, yeah, all right. But they say the devil is in the details, or let me say, the blessings are in the details. All right, they thought they can't spare time, and if you don't spare, if you're not careful, and if you don't want to spend time, you're not going to get those gems, to be honest, are you? And this is something which we all need to learn. If you want to really do anything, you've got to spend time with it. You really have to be focused. Coming back to that focusing and concentration, that is what makes intelligent people intelligent. They focus on it. And the Shaykh is teaching you something very important. He's making Islam experiential for you by saying, just focus in your salah. When you say, Assalamu alayka ya ayyuhan nabi, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Don't just let your tongue say it. Fly to Medina. What? Fly to Medina. Eh? Let your soul go. Your soul wouldn't need Saudi Airlines, okay, to take you there. All right. It just flies. Alhamdulillah. Eh? When you say that, but how you say it, and that is the concentration. That requires a lot of concentration, experiencing. And that is the experiential Islam. And we've lost that, sadly. Just like we've lost the meanings of the Quran. I hope you can now understand when we talk about outward Islam. What are we? We're just scratching the surface, aren't we? Isn't that true? We're just scratching the surface. We really haven't. So, we do need to rediscover the deen now. And there's no reason why we shouldn't. We live in an age where a 10-year-old has, in England, the government's target is that 80% should be at level 4 in English, and which they are nearly. Most schools will. Children at the age of 10 are at level 4 in English, 80% of them. So, and I've tried to come down to that sort of level. This is sort of level 4 English, inshallah, Aziz. A 10-year-old, 11-year-old can easily understand that. And if we, with graduation, with degrees, masters and PhDs, if we can't understand the word of Allah, then we need to ask Allah for a lot of help, really, and guidance. Something is not right. And so we need to really be producing resources that everybody can access. So that is why, I've gone for this plain English and then this sectioning. Let's look at the next section here, the story of the sleepers of the cave. So I said, Messenger, do you consider the people of the cave and Al-Rakim to be our amazing signs? The young men took refuge in the cave and prayed, Our Lord, be kind to us and guide us during our test. While they were inside the cave for many years, we blocked their ears, then awakened them to see which of the two groups was better in assessing length of their stay. So here, the introduction is being given to the story of the Ashabul Kahf. Ephesus it was a very prominent city in the southwest of Turkey, almost on the same longitude as Istanbul, actually, but in the south. It is a very prominent sea port in the time of the Greeks and the Romans, and during the early Christian time, it was a very important place where there were a lot of new Christians and very passionate Christians. And in so this is looking at around about the 3rd century Christian era. Okay, we're looking at around about 2nd, 3rd. This is before Christianity, before the Roman Empire became Christian. And so this story is also mentioned in some of the Christian books, particularly from Syria, some of the Christian writings, not in the Bible, Jan, but there is a whole book of Ephesus in the New Testament, but that's just about because Paul visited it, and it's due to that. But the real story of the seven sleepers of the cave is actually also mentioned in the early Christian writings. So what? So what? Well, and this is a question we should always ask, so what? What is the conclusion? What do we get from these stories? And why does the Quran mention this story? Okay? The Quran is not shy of mentioning that it is Musaddiq, the confirmer of previous books. It's nothing new. This is Allah's, okay? The Genesis was Allah's book. The Torah was Allah's book. Suhuf Ibrahim was Allah's book. All those were Allah's books, okay? They're no one's. He's not copying. He's not imitating, all right? He's not stealing, all right? There's nothing of that. They are Allah's books. He's using them. So some Christians say, oh, look, this is all borrowed. This is all stolen. What do you mean stolen? This is Allah, This is His book. Those were His books. So He's using them. That is His prerogative. He's a Lord. He's the original author of it. I can quote my own books wherever I want to. I quoted them here. My 5 Pillars is quoted here. My 7 Steps to Moral Intelligence is quoted here because they're my books. Okay, what's the problem? So really, but the story is fascinating because the Muslims in Makkah were being challenged, and they were amongst these disbelievers. They were facing the same kind of challenge. And the other challenge they were facing, and people in Makkah were facing, Muslims, is the idea of resurrection. Ba'ath ba'd al-maut was a concept which was alien to the Makkans. The Makkans just couldn't get their head around it. They could understand one God, okay? They could understand the idea of Risala as well, of angels. They could get that. But one thing they just couldn't get their heads around was resurrection. And one of the reasons was they were very materialist. And what do we live in? Age of? Yes, so we live in the same age as those. So the Quran is very contemporary, to be honest. It is the same mindset as it was in Makkah. These materialists. Abu Jahl used to sometimes come with the white bones of camels and say to the Prophet ﷺ, are you telling me this crumbling bone will be brought back to life? Is that what he's saying to me? As though it was beyond his. And the Prophet ﷺ, of course, this is it. And of course, there are dozens of very powerful passages which actually give evidence for Allah's ability to bring dead to life. Allah talks about the arid, the barren, the dry land. And as soon as there is, drops of rain on it, it brings up new life. Allah says, well, this was dead yesterday. Today, you are seeing so much blooming, plants blooming here. You said it was dead. And yet, of course, the Quran also talks about the dry earth. And people think it's dead. But you ask the soil scientist, and he'll tell you how wrong you are. You take a bit of soil, and he'll say, I can show you there are millions of bacteria in there, if not worms or fungi, and all kinds of microbes in it. Okay, it's living. It is actually a living world, and yet you think it's dead. Okay, and so let's just think about this story of the sleepers of the cave. Can I just sort of, those of you who've got the copies there, I'm not going to read anymore, okay, yet. And I want to just take you through how I've divided this story of the 7 sleepers into smaller segments. So the next section from verse 13 to verse, subhanallah, to verse 15. Yes, is these 3 verses. I have labeled them the sleepers of the cave were men of strong faith. Allah praises their faith, really. Okay, these were young men. This is interesting. The Quran uses the word young men. Yeah, no. Al-fityatu. The Quran uses the same word for the followers of Musa alayhi salam. They were also fitya. They were also young men. And who were the followers of Muhammadur Rasulullah? They were, Ali, and Umar, and they were young men. Okay, Yasir, and all these were young men. Yeah, no? So something about young people. What is it about young people? Well, they're more open. As you get older, you become more rusty and more difficult to bend. I'm one of those. So, Mazat Kha from those who might think it's derogatory. It's not, Jen. It's fact, If you want to convert anybody, look for those who are under 30. Or better still, in their teenage years, if you want to really. And this is why. This is why every profession, what do? They try to take people in their teenage. Why do they have police cadets? Why do they have army cadets? They want to instill in them. Because this is the age. If they can't make them soldiers, then they will never be soldiers. All right, and this is the way of all the worlds, and it's very interesting. Can I just tell you, the Qadianis have started taking young people from every family, and they have Waqf No, Aji Sahab, Aji Ramzan Sahab. They have this Waqf big foundation where they take, and they want every one of their family to give one of their young man. So they train. If you Google it, you can find Waqf No. So this is the young people's foundation. So they take young people from each family to, make them their preachers and teachers of the future. But anyway, that was my side. I just wanted to tell you, everybody's doing this because they know that if you don't get them at that age, you'll never have them. Particularly for your, if you want to be missionary. Our deen is missionary, and this is where, why we need good colleges and where we need to be sponsoring our young people in their teenagers to become good hafiz, qari, alim, and du'ats, and people who will serve the deen. We are already crying and lamenting the Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat. We don't have scholars, and we don't have imams. We don't have qaris. We don't have teachers now who can teach. Isn't that true? Which mosque has more than one imam? I'll take one more for myself. You seriously need them. You don't, do you? And particularly British born, because this is, we have to have them from our own country. This is the other thing, Aliens are aliens and foreigners, Let's be honest, Rasulullah sallallahu was, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. A Rasul from amongst you. If he was to be an outsider, he would have thousands of more problems than he was already having. So, and similarly here, if we remain alien and we don't have British-born imams and teachers, we're going to be big losers. So do please think about that and support anybody who's doing that kind of work where they're trying to educate and train the future imams of this. So fitya, very interesting word. This is what atomized tafsir is about. All right, it takes one word and just works on it. Okay, but it loses the theme of it. Okay, so that's the downside of atomized tafsirs. And commentaries. So Allah says, we will tell you the story exactly as it happened. They were young men who had faith in their Lord. We increased them in guidance and improved self-confidence. They stood up boldly before their people and proclaimed, our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Never will we worship gods beside him. That would be an outrageous lie. Our people have taken gods beside him without any clear evidence. Can anyone be more wrong than the one who makes up lies about Allah? This is a speech of, I can't do it. I mean, if I was an actor, it would be a very powerful speech. Can you just imagine, how they were booming, Amazing, isn't it? Can you see the beauty of it? I don't think I might make dua that, we're able to improve it. But I hope, and it's very accurate as well. If you want to be literal about it, pedantic, go and look at it. And semantic, go and look at it, and you'll see it's accurate. There's nothing extra in it. But I hope it's moving. Moving speech, isn't it? This was a speech one of those great walis would have made amongst his people. Very powerful, And it was said, you have now separated yourselves from those people and what they worship beside Allah. So take refuge in the cave, and your Lord will be kind to you. He relieves your suffering. He relieves your sufferings. Now, here, I've been very literal, وَيُحَيِّئْ لَكُمْ min amrikum mirfaqa. Okay. He relieves your sufferings. Okay. So this is someone giving them advice. Who could this be, do you think? So this is a third party, isn't it? Who could this be? Angels. We believe in that, don't we? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Could be, or it could be an old wise believer who's telling them, look, these people are not going to change. You better go away before they kill you, or before they kill you, all of you. Okay. There was a point I wanted to make here, and because in English this doesn't sound right. Look at it. So take refuge in the cave, and your Lord will be kind to you. He relieves your sufferings. He will relieve your sufferings. Perhaps, that might have been, He will relieve your sufferings. He will relieve your sufferings. Yes, He will relieve your sufferings. I think that's perhaps not a. So these are some of the little mistakes, but that's okay. Only Allah is perfect. All right, we're going to make mistakes. So I hope you will forgive. And if you do come across these sort of mistakes like that, do mention. If you can send them to us, we'll do another edition. We're actually going to do another reprint because, Sheikh Saab said, unexpected things happen. When my printers sent me £22,000 bill, and then my editors and all those put all together about £35,000 bill. You wonder, where is the money going to come? I don't know. My staff normally ask me, where is the money going to come from? And you won't believe it. In less than 14 days, we've sold out the 5,000 copies. We haven't been very far, alhamdulillah. So I always say, listen, I don't know. And yet we've got another 5 major projects. There's going to be a paperback without the Arabic for big distribution to non-Muslims. An audio, an app is being made. And where is the money going to come? I said, look, this is Allah's business there now. And I'm linked with one of the richest and the ghani of all, When people say, I have, my son is like this, or my father is rich and all rich. But for us, it doesn't matter. This is Allah's, He will take care of it. Wallah, I'm not joking, Jan. I really, we need to put trust in Allah, I didn't know how I would be able to do this, because I wanted to do the best. I got one of the best editors. You could have Dr. Roderick Vasi, who'd been at the British Library for 20 years, looking after the Arabic manuscripts, and expert in Qurtubi, and one of the best writers in English as well, for me, certainly was. And he just came in the way, when I was just started it, within weeks of starting the translation. And everything began to fall in place, as Allah wanted it, alhamdulillah. So thank you for your wonderful vision the brother had here about our majestic Quran being presented to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And I presented this to Al-Azhari, and alhamdulillah we got an approval from there as well, and they said this is a paradigm shift in the genre of Quran translation. Anyway, but it's still imperfect, all right? Let's be honest, it's imperfect, and you are the people. It's your ghairat as well to help us to make it perfect, isn't it? It's everybody's work. It's not mine, to be honest. I do not, and I will not take a penny from it. This is my, will and wish. I will not personally take anything from this Quran. It's all for dawah purposes, and we have big projects for it. We're hoping to do similar kind of translation. Most likely the translation of my sheikh, but present it in this way in Urdu as well. Because Urdu translations are the most difficult one, more problematic, because, in Urdu, because it's congruent language with Arabic, they do one line of Arabic, one line of Urdu, one line of... So when your old mother at the age of 80, my mother at 92, when she reads, I just don't know how she can manage to understand it. She's at 92 years old, and how can she remember what she read in the previous verse? Then she reads the Arabic, and then she reads that, and then tries to link that up. Do you see the absurdity of that? Which language would you read stories like that? I said, who reads Urdu? I said, do you see that problem है ना? ये उन तो अफसर ठीक है, लेकिन 10-15 साल बाद जो है ना, तुसी देखना कि short-term memory goes, and what will happen? You won't have a clue what you've read in the previous verse. No wonder you can't understand. No wonder perhaps we're like morons, to be honest. We just don't understand because we believe we don't need to understand. What sort of God, we need to change our, really. So one of our projects is to do translations like this in Urdu. Urdu is a very beautiful and a big language, and so that we want to do. We want to do one in Spanish. That covers all of the Latin America, South America. One in Chinese. Inshallah, one of my peer by Dr. Professor Zuhruddin, a Chinese, and he's also a scholar of Islam, did PhD in Islamic. He will be, inshallah, undertaking that in Chinese, and one hopefully in Russian. So inshallah, we hope to, those are big projects. We want to set up an international Quran society where we will be able to disseminate, inshallah, this message of the Quran. And we want others to benefit from this as well, inshallah. So I hope you can see this powerful speech. Had I done it in that broken each verse separately, would you be able to get that tempo of that speech? You wouldn't think, they were great orators, which they were, of course. And the Quran this is the Kalamullah, this is the Fasaha, this is the Balagha, this is the rhetoric of the Quran, the power of it, to be honest. Okay? And then, the Quran then mentions, in the verse 17 onwards, messenger. I've not even put O messenger. I don't like that. That's an old language. You won't find, I might have slipped in somewhere, O believers. Ya ayyuhalladhina, ya ayyuhannas, O human beings. I don't know O, Jan. In modern English, seriously, the best modern English novels or writings, you don't use O, Jan. No? It's not. When I say messenger, that already implies I'm talking to him, okay? Messenger, while they laid in the clear opening of the cave, you could see the sun rise, then move away from them, and turned to their left as it set. This was from the signs of Allah. Anyone guided by Allah is truly guided, and anyone gone astray won't find a guide or a protector. You thought they were awake, but they were asleep. We turned them from right to left. At the entrance of the cave lay their dog with his forelegs stretched out. Were you to stumble across them, you would be filled with fear. Turn your back on them and flee. So I just wanted to illustrate, the plainness of language and how powerful the Quranic speech is. All right. Okay. So this was the story of the 7 sleepers, and the next heading is their awakening. How they wake up. I'm not going to read that. How many were they? Now this was the Quran actually wants to point out here how people can sometimes indulge in useless arguments. All right. Absolutely useless arguments, and the Quran takes it up here. All right. And it's just trying to get the point across. People can waste so much time in useless activities, and we're in actually an age where we are living in that age where there is a lot of useless activities. Okay, yet people are busy, very, very busy. Hey, with what? Useless activities. Yes. You know what busy means? Being under the yoke of shaitan. So whenever anybody says to me, "Are you busy, Dr. Saab?" I said, "No, I'm not busy. Alhamdulillah." Why do I need to be busy? Seriously, it's just madness, absolute madness. When people, are like this, and the reason is there is too many distractions. And one of the points about the Quran and taqwa is to take us away from that distraction. It's the distractions that are destroying our young people. 25% of university students have serious depression now, and that of course is because of all the distractions. They can't avoid them. They have not been disciplined how to avoid distractions, and that is what your sheikh does. He helps you to avoid the distractions, and he puts blinkers on you. Oh, that you might not like that idea, Blinkers on you, but it's good to have blinkers on from certain things, isn't it? Yes, you don't want to. Why do you want to observe every trash that goes around you, eh? Why do you want to listen to every news from every corner of the world, every minute of the day, eh? Why? You crazy? Of course, yes, we might be crazy, and that's why we're doing it. But do you see what I'm saying? So the Quran here is having this little, almost a banter with them in a way. Look, what are you doing, Jana? How many were there? Some will say the people of the cave were just 3, and their dog was the 4th. Others will say there were 5, and the 6th was their dog. These are the mere guesses. Some will say there were 7, and the 8th was their dog. Say, my Lord knows best their number. Only a few have real knowledge of them. So don't argue or ask anyone else about them. It's really trying to make a fun of them. Don't be silly, Jen. There's serious business in life than to know. What we should be asking is, what was the purpose? What was the outcome? That is more important. And the Bible is absolutely fantastic. The Bible is fantastic in giving you these useless details. I read Bible. I'm actually, I was the chair of the Christian Muslim Forum for 6 years, and alhamdulillah, I've interacted with the Archbishop. I spent a lot of time with him. In fact, he invited me for 3 days in Canterbury. We were with him for 3 days, discussing some fantastic, and then he invited me to give a talk at his own church where he was the vicar in Guildford. And I spent other times with him in Cambridge as well. And I read Bible a lot. And it is a shocking book. Seriously, it is a shocking book, And, it is 8 times bigger than this. You need 8 volumes. It's 8 times bigger than this. It's 1,200,000 words. And this is just under 200,000 words. It's about 8 times bigger than this. And why is it so big? Because it's full of useless information, all right? It will give you the exact size of Nuh alayhi salam's ship, okay? It was so many cubits long, so many wide, so high, and how many masts it had in it, how many planks and how many nails in it, okay? And you say, well, I'm really looking for guidance there, no? Where will I get guidance from here? But this is just an important point, I want to make. The Quran is very succinct. It's to the point. Even as I said, it doesn't even say, Ya ayyuhan nabi. It doesn't need to. It's going straight to the point, okay? And this is where, but I'm putting it here, okay, just to help my readers and us, because we're out of his time, all right? So, and another problem, you will face is the Quran assumes a lot. The Quran assumes you know the background, because when it was being revealed, it was real life, it was real time. So it didn't need to tell the background. But for me and you, this is where you need tafsir. So this is the beauty of having tafsir, and particularly the sabab al-nuzul, the circumstances of revelation are helpful. Sometimes, not always, but the Quran can do without that as well. It's powerful, it's meaningful. It wants you to just focus on the lessons. But being curious, and which we should be, we should always be curious. Why is it saying it like this? What was the reason? Then this is where you need to go to Tanwirul Miqbas of Tafsir of Ibn Abbas to look at, what Abdullah ibn Abbas tells you, what was the reason behind it, or the other Mufassirin. Okay, so there's lots of assumptions, and that makes it difficult, particularly for non-Muslims who don't know the story of the Prophet ﷺ's life. And this is where seerah is so important for understanding the Quran as well. You need to know some of that background. It helps in all that, Okay, so the point the Quran wants to make here is, don't waste your time on useless things, all right? Leave scientists to do that, all right? They can measure up how far the sun is from the moon, and all right? You don't need to do that. You get on with, this is book of hidayah, guidance, all right? Then it says, when making a plan, say, Allah willing. I've separated this verse there, and you'll be surprised that this is only 3-liner passage. Why did I do this? As a teacher, I want people to learn a lesson, and the lesson is what? Always say, وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا. Don't say, I will do it. Say, Allah willing. Say, yes, Allah willing, I will do it. Allah willing, I will do it. That's how I will do it is my own, it's in italics if you look at it. Okay? So it's not in the Quran there. And the Quran just says, inshallah. But I've put, I will do it in italics just to complete it, because I want, I don't want the English on our new Muslims or our children, who are not, well, it's left at half. It's not complete. Do you see that? In Arabic, it's different. But in English, I've done this. So when people, why do you need to put this? Well, it's just to complete it in English makes sense. But I've kept it separate. So if anybody wants, it's not confusing. Do you understand that? Okay. So Allah willing, I will do it. So I put this, as a teacher, I said, I've put this separate, this verse, and give it a heading. Because I want to teach. I want to teach them that whenever you make a plan, always say, Allah willing, inshallah, inshallah. Do say Allah willing as well, and there's no harm in it, all right? The barakah is in inshallah as well, but Allah willing as well. Do tell, obviously, the reason is because our children, which language do you think they think in? In Arabic? Yeah, they think in English. So their thinking is in English. We've got to use English. Seriously, if they are not impressed mentally, they're not going to be really good Muslims. We can get them ritualistic Muslims. Ritualistic, yes, but not real. If you want, we need to change their vocabulary and their mindset. And that's why we need to use English. Okay, next is, how long did they stay in the cave? Again, the Quran wants to come back to that same point. Well, here, actually, this is a slightly important point. Why is this an important point? Because the whole point was, this was to be an evidence for resurrection. The story of the Ashabul Kahf really is a proof of Allah's Ba'ath Ba'd al-Maut. Allah is capable of bringing dead to life. So that's perhaps why there is a bit more emphasis on this. Again, the verse 28 is a very interesting one. وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ. And this means, keep yourself with those who worship their Lord morning and evening, longing for His pleasure. Don't turn your eyes away from them to seek the delights of the worldly life. Neither follow him whose mind is forgetful of our remembrance and follows his whims. His case is beyond limits. This is a very powerful, I've put this again separately, and there is a particular circumstances in which it was revealed. The Meccan leaders, the rich, wealthy leaders, didn't like to sit with Bilal and Yasir and the other poor Muslims. Okay, and they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam many times, "Can you get rid of these? One, they smell, and secondly, look, they're slaves, they're poor people. We are wealthy, rich people. How can they sit with us?" I hope you can see something of that in the class system of England. England is famous for its class system. We just saw the great royal wedding, didn't we? Last weekend, was it? Last weekend, wasn't it? Yeah. Amazing. They talk about equality and being Republicans. You just wonder what's going on. If you want to see class system anywhere, come and see the British hierarchies there, no? And the aristocracy and the royal family, and you will get what it means to be rich, eh? And 33 million on a wedding, eh? You talk about israf, and you talk about equality, and you talk about being fair to the poor, eh? So the Meccans weren't much different, to be honest. It's the same system, a class system. Pakistanis have it as well. Don't we get it wrong? If you go to Pakistan, Buzurgs and Nawabs, they sit separately. So, this is a lanat, which the Quran came to get rid of, really. So here, I put a separate heading for it, just to keep company of good people, to give that message, all right? And here, Allah, in a very beautiful and powerful way, is saying, no, they're going nowhere. Rasulullah said, they're going nowhere. Bilal is going to sit here. Eh? Abu Jahl, if you want to sit here, you're welcome. Otherwise, you can go. Eh? I'm not going to... And this is the point. the equality, subhanallah. This is the and the next is the contrasting images of heaven and hell. This is from verse 29 onwards. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. What is this, What is this? The story is finished now. The story of the 7 sleepers is finished now. This is a commentary. Okay, this is the Quran's commentary. Some of the modern scholars call this hinge verses. What? Like qabza links to the door. These are sort of hinge verses which are linking the previous section with the coming one. Subhanallah. And you'll see why it's called a hinge, how it links up with the next section. Just read this and you will see how it beautifully flows into the next section about the rich and the poor person. Right? So this contrasting, and this is where I'm saying to you how coherent it is. But if I hadn't these headings and if I hadn't these sections, you will be very confused now. You will need a Bazawi to explain to you. You'll need a Razi to come and explain to you what he's talking about. Okay, because these were the masters. We don't have those nowadays. So I'm trying to make it easy for you. I hope you can see that. So this is actually a hinge or a buffer zone, you can call it if you want to. But hinge verses would be a nice way to put it. They're nice hinge verses. So this is here the contrasting images of heaven and hell. What the Quran is saying is, look at the people of heaven and hell. If you want to see them, see the Ashabul Kahf, the beautiful examples of people of heaven. But they had to sacrifice, I don't want to tell you the whole story of the Ashabul Kahf. You can read about it. But can you see, I've not told you the story, but I hope you've got the message of it. Okay? But you still do need to read the story to get the fuller message. So there is our dependency on good tafasir, which tell the whole story as well. All right? So this is the hinge verse. Say, the truth is from your Lord, so whoever wants to believe, let him do so. And whoever wishes to deny, let him. We have prepared for the evildoers a fire. Its walls will surround them. When they plead for water, they will be relieved with boiling water, hotter than molten brass that will burn their faces, a dreadful drink and an unbearable place of rest. On the other hand, those who believe and do righteous deeds, we will not waste the reward of the one who does good work. They will have everlasting gardens with streams running beneath them. There they will be wearing golden bracelets, green dresses with silk embroidery and rich pattern. They will be sitting on couches. What a wonderful reward, an amazing resting place. I hope you can see that contrast. But in that, there's very interesting, here Allah says, they will be given not water, but what? But boiling water hotter than molten brass. This is to do with science. At what temperature does brass boil? You're looking at about 800 degrees. Water boils at 100, isn't it? This is amazing. It's already, I'm sure the Arabs and Bedouins had no concept of 100 degrees Celsius, and did they? The boiling water, the boiling point of water, do you think? I doubt it, But the Quran has made a scientific point here. But those who know a bit of science will be able to see this. Do you see that? It's saying it will be hotter, like the molten brass. This is where I'm thanking Allah for making me do science. I used to actually wonder why I wish I'd done something like philosophy and humanities. But now I realize, my God, as a scientist, I can see the atom. I can understand how an atom works with another atom to make a molecule and make it disastrous or powerful medicine. Okay, I can understand those, and really, it's just amazing. As a scientist, and this is really important. Anybody who's going to do tafsir and wants to explain the Quran without the modern knowledge of science is going to struggle badly. Seriously, is going to struggle. If you look at Tafsir Kabir or Fatihul Ghaib of Fakhruddin Razi, it is full of his own day's science. And this is why some naughty people accuse him of having everything except tafsir, sadly. They say this is everything other than tafsir of Quran, na'uzubillah. But that's their narrow-mindedness about him. But it was very, very full of signs of his time. Yeah. And nowadays, of course, laughable, totally out of date, and you would say, well, this is not worth talking about. Anyway, next is a very important second major story. I'm conscious you must be very tired. I think we'll stop now and we'll talk about the other 4 stories later on, inshallah. We'll stop. Jazakallah khair. I'll stop here. If you have any questions, and if I'm given an opportunity again, I'll bore you to death. But any questions? Anybody got any question or a comment you want to make? I'll be happy to listen to your comments as well. Yes, brother.
First, Assalamu alaikum. I look forward to reading your translation, inshallah, and it's thank you for taking the time, inshallah. I pray that Allah rewards you for your intentions. I just want a couple of comments and a question, if I may. Firstly, I've been following your Thoughtful Friday for a good few years, so it's a pleasure to actually meet you in person. And secondly, my father's not buried too far from Muhammad Pixel and Abdullah Yusuf Ali, so I visit them often. So it's great to meet someone who's alive and has translated the Quran as well. So inshallah, that's also a pleasure. The thing I just want to understand, and it especially relates to the messages that you send, Thoughtful Friday, and the relevance that it has to what Islam means for me. So in terms of being good to your neighbour in the actions that you do, that very much is Islam that I've been reared on, and that's the Islam that I understand. And I think the challenge that we have at the moment is that's not the Islam that's being portrayed out there, or that which is being understood. So let's just take your message on Friday, which I thought was really apt. It was detoxing from mobile phones and so forth. So ironically, on this retreat, we've all been banned from using our mobile phones, and we only get them given back to us at a set time during the day. So it was quite an apt message to get on the Friday. But one of the challenges I find, so I'm not from the north, I'm from the south, right? And from where I work in the city, but I do some volunteering work with a charity that I'm involved kind of within the inner city, and there's a real struggle around how we portray Islam across the board. And one of the things that we've been doing here under the tutelage of Sheikh Ahmed is an extension of actually what you've done, which is the manifestation of practicing Islam. Literally those messages that you send about being good to your neighbour, refraining from backbiting, all those type of things that are absolutely manifestation. And the struggle that I find sometimes is my task, how do I relay that to the masses effectively? Because the people that I work with in the city who are quite distant from Islam, I think they equally need it to those that are within the inner city, and equally to the non-Muslims, because when I tell them about the Islam that you speak of and the Islam that I recognise, that's not the Islam that they know. And so this practical implementation, what in your experience, or what would you suggest that we do to kind of have that message across the masses?
Very interesting question, and thank you for appreciating my thought for Friday, which I send out. And anybody else wants to do, please, I'll give you my email, and you send your email and we'll keep you on our database. There's 6 or now 7 billion human beings, and every human being is unique and has a unique taste and way of learning and understanding. And I think what we need to be doing is have diverse and different means of conveying our deen. So, and I think where we become poor is when we say that it is you, Maulvi Sahib, it is you, Sheikh, who's responsible for Islam. That is where we make the mistake. You, as a worker in finance, have a responsibility to convey this message in a way that that this particular group of people, with their particular mindset and with their particular needs, you are the best to know that, better than me or any sheikh You are the best. So this is where we need this, whole array of du'ats and preachers and people doing the work. So, our poverty is because we confine it to a particular group, and that's wrong. Every Muslim is a muballigh. Every Muslim is supposed to be. When the Quran says, يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, nowhere does it say it is the duty of the ulama or the imams or, no particular class. You are all supposed to be. And you are all supposed to be setting up these organizations. So, working with Sheikh here, I'm sure, he is working with different, variety of people. And each one has his own peculiar needs. So I don't think there is any particular way of doing dawah. I think there are, there is a principle of them. Certainly, there's a principle. There is a set competences you need to have. But other than that, every one of us here, should be the da'i and the spreader of deen. Even if it means looking after the treasury of your masjid, being a treasurer of your masjid, or being the secretary of your masjid, or a teacher in your masjid, or just a user there, but a volunteer, who helps the young people, the youth club. There's 1,001 ways, and this is where I think we need to be really broad and open, and we as imams and leaders, religious leaders, need to have others helping us. This is how, alhamdulillah, I'm trying to reorganize the Jamaat-e-Ahl-Sunnat of UK. I've been tasked with that, and we're going to have a big Sunni conference, and Sheikh will be there, inshallah, and all you, I hope, will be there. And what we are trying to do is, we're trying to say that every member of our Jamaat has a duty and responsibility. It is not just a few of us. So inshallah, I think we need to spread this. All of us begin to take responsibility. It's only when we shirk that responsibility do we fail. So, I'm sure this is what the Shaykh also wants every one of you to go out as his da'is, as his preachers and as his teachers, really, who set up their own, zaviyas, their own corner shops. Yes, that's right, a corner shop. We should be proud of our corner shop of Islam. Yes, it is tijara. Tijaratan lan tabura. Okay, a business that will never fail. You will never have bankruptcy in this business of Allah. Okay, so let's all, inshallah, work in that. Yes.
Jazakallah, thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, there's, mashallah, there's lots of people on this side here.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Thank you very much indeed for this deeply academic discourse. In fact, it doesn't have, as you said yourself, claims, because whatever you put forward, in fact, is immediately followed by solid ground and by warrants and by backing and rebuttal and qualifiers. Those, in fact, distinctive features of academic discourses which we are used to, in fact, in universities. Some 55, 56 years before, I was 3 years old at that time, or even less. My father used to give me to one of our neighbors who was a teacher in a Quranic school, and he used to take me. The Quranic school is, in fact, some 2-3 blocks from where we lived in Morocco, in Meknes, place near Fez. And I couldn't walk. And if he left me, I couldn't come back home. And while taking me and staying with him, listening to the Holy Quran being recited and repeated over and over again, alhamdulillah, I managed to learn by heart parts of the from exactly from Tabarak al-Mulk, Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-Mulk, till the end. So I said so just to give you the background of my question, which is the following. In fact, if we wait for people to be able to understand the Holy Quran before coming into contact with it, or before reading it or learning it by heart, maybe we may miss, in fact, the best part of one's life, because if a young man, if a child learns the Holy Quran even before being able to walk and talk, in fact, it goes into the making of his bones, of his himself, and that in itself is makes him sort of immune later on. So in one way or another, one day he will come back to the Holy Quran, because I used to, as I said, when I was put in the primary school, for instance, they used to say, this is alif, this is ba, and I was looking at them. In fact, I can recite, in fact, for hours and hours. I can even write it. Now this is it. In fact, to what extent we can, or shall we necessarily wait for people to understand the Holy Quran before we can? Okay, because you talked about.
I've got what you mean.
Okay.
I entirely agree with you that.
Thank you.
We have to teach our children from the age of 4 to read the Quran. So by the age of 6, they should be readers of the Quran. And I also love to do hifz. Alhamdulillah, we run 3 hifz schools. In my own institute, we have 3 hifz schools. One where we have 52 children, mashallah, and I've had dozens of children who become hafiz, girls and boys, and alhamdulillah. So we believe in teaching the Quran in Arabic. They have to read fluently, with tajweed, beautifully. Yes, that is nowhere. But when they start reading the Quran, now, Aj Ramzan Sahab, when they start reading the Quran, and those of you who've got children at the age of 6 or 7 and who can, by the age of 7 in English as well, they are free readers. At school, they become what we call free readers. They can read any of their school books. Is that right? Those who've got children of that age will know that. And so what we want to do is, so by the age of 7, they are readers of English as well. Now they can read Arabic fluently. Our children take about 2 years to finish Yasr al-Quran on average. Some do it quicker, some a bit later. But so they are readers now. They can also read a bit of English. So I would say to them, yes, of course, reading with tajweed and beautiful and memorizing is good. But at the same time, we get them into the habit of reading, into the habit. If we don't do that, then forever they will think we don't have to. That's what I was saying. So I don't know whether that answers your question. We have to. Arabic is must. No way. We're not going to have a Ataturk's revolution. All right? We don't believe in that.
Inshallah. Jazakallah. Maybe we can conclude now, inshallah. And then obviously we have Dr. Saab with us for the 24 hours, inshallah. They'll also be, they requested, inshallah, after Taraweeh to give a short enlightening session as well, inshallah.
I'll be happy to sit with you. Can I just also, those of you who want to pay for these, can somebody take a responsibility?
Yeah, we'll arrange that, inshallah.
Great. Jazakallah khair. Thank you. And take many copies for your friends, and so my treasurer doesn't have to worry. So do, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. I will sign them, as well. It's an innovation, but I think it's allowed, Sheikh? I can sign them. Yes. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your evening.
Bismillah, inshallah, we're all gonna it's gonna be rest time now. However, those brothers that have asked to see one of the ustads, we're gonna give you guys all an opportunity now. So what's gonna happen is the ustads are gonna gather in the basement. So if they can make their way there now, such as Brother Ijaz, Professor Muhammad, Brother Mujtaba, etc., etc., if you make your way to the basement, and then all those who put their names down to see the ustads, if you could just wait outside the basement, give them a couple of minutes to get there, and inshallah we'll see them, and then everyone else inshallah use this time to rest.